Well, hello to you, my Waterproofian. Welcome back to another episode of Waterproof Records with me, your host, Jacob Givens. I'm excited for this episode today, and we're going to dive in here shortly, but I'm glad to have you back, and I hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. It's been a busy month. That's why this episode is coming to you a little bit later than usual. I had to do Riot Fest. I had to do a work trip. I've been all over the place in the month of September, but let me tell you something. October is going to be just as crazy for me. So many things going on, and I love spooky season. I'm a crazy Halloween obsessive, and I love this time of year so much. I made a vampire horror comedy movie called I Had a Bloody Good Time at House Harker, in case you've never seen that before. It's on Amazon Prime. But I'm so stoked about today's guest. Cannot believe we got a chance to connect in real life. But today my guest is a legendary founding father of so much of the New York hardcore scene, has been so prolific in his career, written so many songs, sang so many songs, had so many incredible bands. And I'm holding here right in front of me the 30th anniversary of Slip by Quicksand. Yes, Walter Schreifels. If you are familiar with Walter's work, you know that he has been in the game for quite some time now. And he's got bands like Biscuits, where it started out, and then Quicksand and Rival Schools, and he has solo work. A producer, a songwriter, singer. He has his own labels. He's just really done it all, and just such a wonderful, charming person. And I was so excited to get a chance to meet him at Riot Fest. We had connected briefly over my social media, and I, of course, am a big fan of his work. So let's jump into the show, and it's almost time, but it's time to talk to the legendary, amazing leader of Quicksand, Rival Schools, Biscuits, and many more. If I listed them all, we'd be here all day. It's time to talk to Walter Schreifels. Let's go.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens.
This is great. I love that I get the opportunity to do this, to do the show where I talk to you about albums that I love, memories, wax nostalgic, talk about those classic moments in my youth. And I really do love how when I make videos or I make content, that it reaches the people that I admire and really have respected and have inspired me my whole life. And this gentleman is definitely one of those people. And like I said, it was great to meet him a few weeks ago at Riot Fest in Chicago. And when he agreed to come on the show, I was ecstatic about it and just really looking forward to having him on the show. Before we dive into it, of course, I got to talk to you about my favorite thing of all, which is DistroKid, the sponsor of the show. DistroKid is the reason that I get to keep making this, and it's growing and getting bigger. And DistroKid has an exclusive link that you can use if you click on it in my bio or in this episode. And it's just distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. That's all you need. And that's 30% off your first year with DistroKid. And what is DistroKid? I've told you before, but I'm going to tell you again in case you're new to my show and you've never heard this before because you tune in, you saw Walter Schreifels is on this. I'm tuning in. So if you've never used DistroKid before, it's the way that you're going to get your music out there on all those streaming platforms, YouTube, all the places your music can be like that. And it's super easy. They have an iOS app. All you do is you upload your music, and it can be one song, it can be a double album, whatever you're wanting to put out there. Any genre, any style of music that you want to play. Hey, you could be just like tapping your thighs and singing out in your living room, and that could be a big hit. That could be like lapcore, we'll call it, I don't know. Probably exists. There's every kind of core, isn't there? But anyway, so make sure you use distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof to get that 30% off. I use them. I put my album from 2007 out there, and I currently have some stuff in the process. And I know I say that from week to week, but I'm telling you, what I'm working on will be coming soon, just getting all the nuts and bolts in place. But now that I've talked about the sponsor, now that I've talked about what this episode is going to be covering, now that I have my Quicksand Slip 30th anniversary book right here, deluxe edition. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest to the show. Welcome to Waterproof Records, Walter Schreifels. So glad to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Jacob. Happy to be here.
Yes. Just absolutely thrilled that we finally got a chance to meet in person just a couple weeks ago at Riot Fest. That was awesome.
Oh, it was such a fun time. Yeah, and great to meet you too. Like, what is it called? Where you parasocial relationship? Like, I know you from Instagram, and so I already feel like I know you.
Yeah,
so it was great to see you in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And after watching you conquer 3 days with 3 different bands at a festival, what an undertaking! I mean, holy shit! Were you tired?
Not like physically. I guess there's a lot of we just did it very like there's 3 different bands, so like I'm pretty self-sufficient in each thing, so it's a lot of just like carrying my guitar around, throwing cables down, and like we didn't have any techs or anything like that. We did it just like throw and go, and so I don't know, that was part of it. But mostly it's just fun. I mean, we practiced a lot for Quicksand, so we're really prepared. And Rival Schools we had played like a month or 2 ago, so I felt pretty comfortable with that. And Gorilla Biscuits really kind of just plays itself. So it was all lots of fun and very exciting. And it was so cool to see like so many friends and peers and amazing bands. Like I really loved Warpaint. The Cure were awesome. The Bronx are always great. I just kind of got little vignettes of fake names. I saw them, and so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really was. It was my first Riot Fest, and my first time getting a chance to see Quicksand and Rival Schools play live. I was so excited. I have right here my deluxe slip book right here. Proud owner.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So
great.
Cool. So cool. I was watching you perform up there. You were fantastic. And I was like, clearly he's got his cardio up. And then upon further research, I found out you are an avid runner. And so obviously the only way you could do that many performances is that you're up to the challenge. Your body is up to the challenge.
Yeah, I love running. I mean, I've run for probably as long as 20, 30 years. And it's just, especially on tour, it's really a great way to kind of, you can get very isolated in this, sit around the club or whatever. I get a chance to go see the city. I go get away from, although I like the people I'm traveling with generally, it's nice to get away and have my own experience. And I love running long distances for just the challenge of it, and keeps you healthy, especially as I'm getting a little older these days, so you want to make sure everything's working.
Yeah, same. I've been struck by the same desire and need to stretch and stay in shape, because the body's starting to do things and I'm like, uh-oh.
yeah but it's fun. Like, it's not like if you're keeping, I mean, by keeping your body active, it keeps your mind active, and getting older is awesome, because you have a lot of perspective, and if you're still curious about things, it's really awesome. But your body will start to fall apart, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. Well, I agree. Getting older is awesome. I'm not one of those people that, fears it or loathes now that I'm in my mid 40s. I still feel mentally up here like I have that same youthful exuberance. As you can see in my videos, I still have this love and desire to express myself as ever before. So
it's wonderful. Like, I think it's that's really a lot of the appeal of what you do for me, is like that you have that wonderment. And
thank you.
That you need that, especially as me as an artist, to keep creating. Of course, like I'm I have a level of expertise and understanding of how to like manifest different things that I can imagine, but you need to be have that kind of beginner's mind sometime, I guess is the way to look at it. And that is that wonderment that you have when you first discover music in that way.
Yeah, my audience has heard me talk about it before, but just a brief glimpse as to why I think I've retained it is I moved to Los Angeles and Hollywood at 21 years old, trying to make it in the movie business and the film and TV business and, all that. And so I spent so many years focused on that path, that avenue, that music was always just there as a love. It was never a pursuit. It was never a career pursuit. I was in bands in high school and college and, I played and whatnot. So music never got bogged down by the environment getting corrupted, being around a scene for so long that then you get jaded or you deal with like a promoter doing this or this going bad. So I was always kind of able to retain to that youthful exuberance, and it's carried on into my adult life. So I'm grateful for that, because there are so many cynics and jaded kind of perspectives on music and bands. And now people kind of look at the music scene and they say, there's not any good music coming out. I'm like, no, there absolutely is. It's just,
oh my God, the problem, it's sort of like trying to drink out of a fire hose. There's so much music coming out.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. So I definitely get that from you. And while I'm not at your level of excitement, I feed off of it. So
few are, Walter, few are. I'm one of those people that I'm like this in real life, like people who know me really well, they go, well, that's just like hanging out with Jacob normally, so.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful thing. You don't change.
I'm trying as many comment trolls that try to get me down. I try to ignore them, but
yeah.
But I just such a fan of your work, and you're such a prolific songwriter, and you've been writing for so long. And when I posted a video about being a fan of Quicksand and then posting the video of seeing you, so many people were like, wow, Riot Fest was like a Walter sandwich for you. They were like, clearly you're a Walter Schreifels fan. And so people wrote in the comments, they were like, so are you a hardcore guy, Jacob? And I was like, the funny thing is I never was. And I never was really into hardcore music, but you kind of slipped through because see what I did there? You kind of slipped through because I felt like when it was introduced to me in the late 90s, it was just right. It was just right. It had elements of that scene, but enough of its own thing that I think it really connected. It had the heavier side, the metal side, and really spoke to me. Head to Wall was the first song of yours that I ever heard. A buddy put it on a mixtape, and I was like, who is this? It was so,
oh my God,
so great. Such a great memory. But I was late. I was late to learning about you. It wasn't until about 97 or 98. I missed it as it was happening, as I know this was Slip was 1993, 30 as it celebrated 30 years this year.
Yeah. God bless.
Yeah, but I wanted to know a little bit, and I know you've probably talked a lot about being in the hardcore scene and Gorilla Biscuits and coming up in that, and you also seem like somebody who walks a fine line between being part of hardcore, which I was very intimidated by. I mean, look, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's not like I was really surrounded by that many hardcore kids, but the way I perceived it, it seemed super aggressive and intimidating. And there was a lot of like macho toughness associated. And for me as a teenager, that scared me away a little bit. I was like, look, man, I'm in the Crucible play at school. I'm in drama and I like bands, but I don't think I'll fit in with the hardcore kids.
Yeah. I think that's I really like how the hardcore scene has as it's reflected now, in that there's so much like it's so broad, in terms of like who's doing it, the kind of motivation behind it, which is not, I don't think, although there's a space for this kind of like macho kind of thing.
Yeah.
it's not about that. And I think the larger the bigger picture is about the ethics of it,
Hmm.
and that it's a community, and that it exists outside of these sort of main channels of kind of corporate delivery systems. And I
Yeah.
think that that's the beauty of it. And I think now, as I see, like, new Gorilla Biscuits just played in New York, and I was looking at the audience, and it's a very like young audience, although there's people my age, of course, that experienced it the first time around, but the majority is like a young audience. And looking at how these people are experiencing it, it's like really how I hoped it would be at the time that I was in it,
Yeah.
and I think that the violence aspect, I mean, back then, I was a teenager, the image of like what punk was,
Right. Right. Right.
so if you watch like Repo Man or Suburbia, or even just like watch the Sex Pistols, it's
Hmm.
about this sort of like, spitting toughness,
Hmm.
violence, you know what I mean? And a sort of fashion aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is so appealing as like a 14-year-old or something, to just be bad. You know
Be
what I
bad.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad with a group of people, and dress wild, and be like um outside of these like mainstream kind of like, oh yeah, oh, you think you're radical because you like Iron Maiden? Like, no disrespect to Iron Maiden, and it is kind of underground, but like, what about Urban Waste, or what about
Yeah.
Agnostic Front, or the Circle Jerks, or these
Yeah.
kind of things, which were, I felt like, just so much closer to the street level.
Yeah.
And that was appealing. But I think it's sort of more that violent thing. The thrill would be, and the dancing is obviously violent. But the thrill of it is that appeal of being bad, but
Hmm.
also getting out of it and escaping, not getting killed. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
uh, I wasn't working any violence on anyone else. It's just not who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't going there to be violent, but I was
Right.
going there to be amongst violence, to survive it, and to gain something from it. That was maybe, I think, some of the appeal. But as I got more comfortable in it, it's like, okay, this all scene also attracts a lot of sociopathic people that are just trying to work out some demons. You know what I
Right.
mean?
For sure.
And that's, there's got to be a space for that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of people in that found, in some ways it compounded, or justified some of the fucked upness that they maybe experienced in their childhood or whatever. But for others, it was really meaningful, and built bonds, and there's a lot of positive things that came out of it. That got tiring for me,
Yeah.
being in that aspect of it, because I had worked through that
Yeah.
aspect of it. And so, that kind of led me to start to recognize that what we were doing in terms of making this music on our own terms, and creating new styles, and influencing each other, and raising this community up, that in itself was the value that I was most focused on. And so I continued on doing music, and was recognized. And I think the hardcore thing contextualizes it, but in real reality, like, I was very, very into it for a couple of years as a teenager. But
Yeah.
it's more like my friendships, and where I learned how to do things, and how I learned how to understand how scenes form, and what makes people want to jump off a stage, or fly off the stage, or makes people want to write a fanzine, or get up in the pit and take photographs, and all these kinds of things. What are the motivators behind that?
Yeah.
And who are the people that are down to do that, and then not only just put themselves in it, but like start to see it as an art, and refine it, and get better at it. And that's what I think is really the most important aspect of the whole experience. Whereas, like, seeing it from Tulsa is like, these guys look crazy. Like, that
Yeah.
looks
Yeah, mine
That looks
was.
that looks like a bad place for me.
Yeah, it's an outsider
And
looking in. It's like I'm way over there, and what I'm getting is on MTV News. Kurt Loder is delivering
yeah,
something to me, or I'm watching it through this layers deep. It's such a different world now, right? Where you can have a kid with an iPhone in the middle of the club recording the show, and instantly
yeah,
I can see what the environment is like. But as a little kid watching things, I'm only getting the information, and then you don't understand the dynamics of it. It isn't until you're older that you start to understand a little bit more about what the scene can be about and how things can be distorted to deter people away or to kind of keep it, its own thing. So it is always fascinating to hear your journey through being a kid from New York and being right there in the heart of it as it was, coming
yeah.
up. So
I was in the right place, right time as well. That it all came together like that. But I think of it as like, you ever watch like the Little Rascals?
yeah,
Little Rascals kids.
yes.
Definitely, like, you're probably the last group of people that knows what the Little Rascals.
Right. I'm at the tail end there, Walter. I'm at the tail end.
You're probably at the very last of that group, but
Yeah.
it's where kids are putting together their little shows and their little dramas and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
all little kids doing these like sophisticated things that they see in the adult world, but they're mirroring it in their own
Yeah.
way. That's what the hardcore scene was like for me. And I think I'm not so plugged in to the music, honestly, but it's the energy, it's the people, and it's the ethics
Yeah.
that I find a thing. And the violent part of it was kind of it's fun to do something dangerous and survive it.
Sure.
But that's gonna either, to some people that's just like a non-starter, and for other people maybe it runs its course.
Yeah.
To other people, they can get to the heart of it, in a way. So I think it's interesting to see, like, with a band like Turnstile having so much success, and the bands under that, like, what the meaning of it is, and I think it's really pretty great, and closer to what I really appreciate about the whole thing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Turnstile, by the way. I love their last album they put out, and I thought they put on an amazing show at Riot Fest. I thought that was awesome. Really, really cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't think they're amazing.
yeah, it was really great. And, I often tell this to people that they're surprised to find out I, obviously have a lot of music and bands that I like. And like you, never one thing, not pigeonholed, as you've done so many projects and bands. There's just many variations as to what you're interested in. People often are surprised they find out, like, I like heavy metal or death metal or whatever. And I'll say to them, you go to a really heavy metal show, and I'll say, those are some of the nicest people. The guys that want to get in the pit and just destroy each other out there. They're incredibly friendly, when you're passing by or whatever, and outsiders will say, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, these people don't feel like they fit in anywhere except this one place." And it must have been like that as well for the hardcore scene. It's like, yeah, it's like this is our home here. Out there in the real world, I don't really feel like anybody understands me. And so that's always a nice feeling as a teenager, as an adolescent, to feel like you belong. Yeah. So you grew up in New York, and obviously before all this music stuff, at one point in time, Walter was a little kid listening to music. Did you have a musical household where music was being played in your home?
Yeah, I think when my dad was very into like hi-fi equipment, so he had like this kind of like classic 70s guy, like Marantz, he would just get this, which I think would piss my mom off, that he would spend money on that. But he had kind of like he had some Beach Boys albums, but he was very much on the like kind of Steely Dan kind of yacht rock trip of the 70s.
Yeah.
Not my favorite kind of music, but I did have a nice thing to play records on. My mom had she had interesting records, like she had Neil Young records, Donovan records, Bob Dylan records.
Oh wow!
Some weird experimental ones. She had this one record called the New York Rock and Roll Ensemble, which was this group of Juilliard students from the late 60s that made a rock band. So it was pretty avant-garde, and So she had some interesting records for me to just discover in the collection. And as I probably by like I was maybe in fourth grade or something, I would like kind of scrape allowance to buy like I remember I bought Got Live If You Want It by the Rolling Stones because it seemed like it was the cheapest record and it had a lot of hits on it, I guess. And or I bought the Beatles Red album with all the hits on it. My brother bought the blue one, so we had all the Beatles stuff. So I started buying records. So I would say there was a certain musicalness to my parents, and also I have a big extended family, and my cousins were all super like Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, like that's very New York, like the Springsteen, Billy Joel. And I had a cousin that was into Southern rock. I used to hang out with him and take the seeds out of his weed. And he would Molly Hatchet, Leonard Skinner, classic rock. And it was a time where you could just turn on FM radio in New York. WPLJ was the big station. And just get an education on a lot of the music of basically this 1970s and cool stuff from the 60s, and they would slide in a Clash song now and again, or like Stray Cats, like things that were kind of more happening on a new wave thing. I loved Blondie, and I remember buying Blondie records when Heart of Glass came out. I bought Parallel Lines as a little kid and Eat to the Beat. And I bought End of the Century by the Ramones when that came out. Whatever. I'm aging myself, but this between my parents, my cousins, and staying up late to watch Saturday Night Live or Don Kirshner's rock concert, which is was very, very challenging because when you're a little kid, it's very hard to stay up that late. But I would just like make myself just like totally. Like I remember seeing the B-52s on Saturday Night Live and just having a really psychedelic experience where I had a premonition of what the next lyric was going to be. They played Rock Lobster. Yeah. And he was in a jam. I knew he was going to say that. You knew it. And he said it. Yeah. And then the giant clam rhyme, I didn't see coming, but I just knew he was going to. And it was like, I was 10 years old and having this like psychedelic experience. That's amazing. About the B-52s. Yeah, it was really weird. And so I bought their record too. So, I was already on my journey at a young age. Yeah, really. It speaks to, that's a lyrics brain right there. You've had to write so many songs in your life. Lyrics, that was a premonition too, as to just how much, would you say that songwriting and lyrics come very naturally? When you sit down to write a song, it's like they flow out of you, or do you find yourself sitting there and kind of trying to find the thing as you're putting it together? Lyrics are tough because I've written so many of them. So you end up hitting a lot of the same themes. You start hitting the same themes and same words. And the more you write, the more you have to push yourself to find out different ways of doing it to keep it interesting for yourself. Right. My first 20, 30 songs, I don't know if it was easy or I just had, like less, we're talking about earlier, that beginner's mind of like, who cares, Right. Where now I have to, sometimes things do come easy, like I'll catch a break. Mm-hmm. But other times I'll have to, it's work. If you don't kind of sit yourself down and do it, it sometimes like just doesn't write itself. So you have to create the conditions where it will open. But lyrics, melodies and chord progressions comes very easy to me. Like that I have no problem with. Yeah, I can tell. Honestly, I just the influence that you have, the music that you just talked about. By the way, I've gleaned that your mother was the cool parent when it came to her music taste, because that seems like she was the cooler one. A bit, but my dad was into cool shit like
Yeah.
of the time,
Yeah.
like Doobie Brothers, Steely Dan, like yeah, like basically, Fleetwood Mac, yacht rock. My dad
Yeah.
was like very on trend with it,
Yeah.
and he was into hi-fi. So, but yeah,
He
my mom's music definitely resonates
she
more
had the
with me.
avant-garde. She had that, you know what I mean? She danced
Yeah.
outside the lines. She found the weird shit. But I was gonna say, so about your songwriting and melodies and how they came naturally. I think this is a good time as any to get into. I asked you about your waterproof record, and the name of the show is essentially my son when he was in the bath when he was young. I said, hey, I wanna start a record store one day, and he's like 4. And he's dipping a blank CD in the tub, and he says, I said, what should I call the name of the record store? And he says, Waterproof. And I was like,
Ah,
and I go, oh, that's actually a really kick-ass name. And then I started to
it's
think,
good.
yeah, and I started thinking about it more about like having this record store, and I started thinking about the concept of waterproof being unsinkable, something you can't wash away. It'll stand through the test of time. So that's where that name comes from. And so I asked Walter Schreifels, I said, what's the record? What's your waterproof record? And he let me know. You can share it. What was it?
I guess it was relating because you framed it in like what kind of made me think of just I want to be in a band and I could do it. Like
Yeah.
what put that path out there in front of me.
Yeah.
And for me it was when I went to my cousin who I used to clean the seeds out of his weed for, his best guy, my cousin Johnny, and he was really into music and I hung out with him a lot. He took me to a double feature at our local movie theater, and it was to see The Kids Are All Right, which was the Who movie.
Mhm.
And we got there to see that movie. It was amazing. Kids Are All Right is such an incredible movie,
Yeah.
mind blowing, like really, really made a huge impact on me. But I didn't realize it was a double feature because when The Kids Are Right ended, there was another movie that they showed, and that movie was Rock and Roll High School, which was the Ramones movie.
Which I've never seen, which is crazy to me because I was looking at the soundtrack and I was like, this looks like it would be a really fun movie. Is it a good movie despite the soundtrack?
I think now it's probably a little bit trashy, but
Good.
probably good, probably still good.
Yeah.
Definitely the footage of the Ramones is amazing. Probably like a lot of great clips. I don't know. I haven't watched it
Watched it a long
an
time.
entire film,
Yeah.
but my brain at that time looked like here I was like in junior high, I guess, like the beginning
Yeah.
of junior high, and I already was ahead of the curve. It's like, I want to be in Rock and Roll High School. Like
Right.
these guys are playing a kind of music that is simple, aggressive, fun, melodic, and all the people around them are just like having the best time, and it's bad, but it's good. And like I want to live in that world.
Yes.
And the way that the music was simple enough that it seemed like these guys could not, just by the way that I didn't really understand, but it's like just by the way that they carried themselves, it was obvious that they weren't like, it wasn't about being a great musician.
Yeah.
It was like they were probably the least good musician you could be,
Right.
and
Right.
still make this incredible sound. So it
Yeah.
seemed like, whereas if you were to like look at even the Who, you know what I mean? Like having just seen the Who, like obviously there's this level of sophistication to
Right.
what they were doing, which it seems like on like you couldn't touch that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Whereas Ramones, it just seemed like if I just like throw a rock, I can hit it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's that close. And so yeah, that really kind of I think sparked something in me that this was accessible. And at that time I didn't know, I'd maybe heard of I don't think I'd ever heard of the Ramones. So it was just like kind of like when I got this DVD of the Beatles the first time they played Ed Sullivan, and I remember watching it and just trying to get in the headspace of you're just turning on TV and seeing this, and
Yeah.
these guys with these haircuts and these weird
Right.
suits and shaking their heads and doing these things.
Right.
Like it must have seemed like they landed from outer space to people.
Totally. Back then,
And-
it's like no context for where this is coming
No
from.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we don't know, like, you know, we don't know, the Beatles and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, here's something. What do you
What do you
what's
think?
this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Ramones seeing that movie to me was like that. It was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Like
Right.
that's incredible.
And so cool looking too. You know, like just they
Yeah,
had that New York cool about them. It just this is what I find to be an interesting recurring theme for musicians and songwriters, and especially when you're a young kid. You know, you're in middle school, you're in junior high, and there's some of us that see the soloing and the unbelievable like technique, and they follow that path, and they go they want to shred. But for me, I was also very intimidated by the musicianship of these bands that I was being introduced to at a young age, that I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm never going to be able to do that. And so I think a mirror of your time of the Ramones was, you know, I'm about a decade later, and that's the grunge explosion, right? And so for me, it's the movie Singles, right? So I see the movie Singles, and that really makes me feel like I could be in a band. I could play those chords. I could play those songs. That's accessible. Yeah. And so that's what inspired me to pick up the guitar. And so for you, it was a similar energy, which is it broke down that point of entry to be like, it's something I think I can do. So after that movie, were you like, I want a guitar? I want a guitar right now?
Yeah, 100%. And it was going to have to be an electric guitar, like not this like acoustic crap. So
you do that later, Walter. You do the acoustic later when you got older and more sophisticated.
Yeah. So I started like working my relatives for like to get to my Christmas present money up.
Yeah.
You know, and to get a guitar. I managed to get an electric guitar. I guess it was probably within that year. And
do you know how old you were, you think?
Like 13.
13
or 14. And I had a friend, a couple friends, that were started taking guitar lessons, and for like $5 a lesson, which is insane.
Yeah.
And so I got like $35 or something for my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got 7 guitar lessons for that. And, you know, maybe I got another installment somehow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I had to play guitar for $35, basically.
Yeah. And that's where it started.
You know?
That's where it started. That's it. You're playing guitar, and you start finding probably melodies and chords and things very quickly, you know, because it looks like even in the early days of the Gorilla Biscuits, you're the lyricist, you're the songwriter. That was that was what you were charged with doing. It was a gift early on.
So I just was psyched for it. I mean, immediately that's what I was doing. I think the other thing about the Ramones movie too is like, it was cool to see, you know, where you have like, and it's a great juxtaposition of the Who. I think they do share a lot of DNA, the Who and the Ramones in some way. But, you know, where these 70s rock bands that I said I would be hearing on WPLJ, you know what I mean? Like the Who, these bands, they had a hugeness about them. You know what I mean? They're playing like arenas, they're playing, they're in airplanes, et cetera. And they have this like massive sort of where people are just kind of worshiping them in this sort of like massive way. What I loved about the Ramones film was that where they were playing was like this crappy place, and they were showing up in like a shitty convertible with style, and there wasn't a lot of people there, but the way that they were revered was as if they were gods in this like but in this small way. So like they didn't need the airplane. They had the convertible. They didn't need Madison Square Garden and laser beams. They had like a rat on stage dancing, you know, a person in a rat costume. Yeah. So it's like that. This was a way to, again, that is more accessible. Like this is a way to experience all of that stuff in a way, but without all that pomp, but with a more like sort of boiled down sort of like way. And I think that was also appealing to me, that you know, I mean, I wouldn't mind trying on like the Quicksand 747 and flying around in that for a while. I wouldn't mind
Sure.
trying that on for size to see if I like it.
Right.
But I probably could get used to it, but I also just like that the intensity of a show in a small place with the people that really really love that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and I think that also had an appeal to me,
Yeah.
which I just recognized,
Yeah.
that there was this underground scene where the real shit was happening,
Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
the stuff that everyone in your fucking class knows about, you know what I mean, that
Totally.
anybody.
Totally. Every young adolescent, a lot of us want to see through the bullshit. That's a huge desire that's, been in literature and movies, that there are certain kids that go, everybody's just pretending. This is all a lie. This is all a facade. And those big, amazing arena bands can totally crush it. And you can love seeing their performance and love their records.
Yeah.
But when you feel kind of alone, or like a little bit of a misfit amongst your peers, or people don't quite understand you, there is something so great about looking at this tiny little room where the person on stage just doesn't feel that far from you at all. And I think that was a really exciting thing about growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before everything was so ever present, because our windows were just so much smaller. Our peering out to what was possible was just in a very narrow, small space. And it was very exciting to grow up at that time, because you were like, something is possible through this little tiny door. Whereas I think the realm of possibility, like we talked about before with the fire hose and how much music, look, kids are still coming up and watching Quicksand and Rival Schools and seeing you and being inspired by you. Their tools that they're given are so much more available and plentiful. And I'm not complaining or saying like that. It's just such a different time where if you want to record an album in your basement, you can do it. You can do it on your computer.
It'll probably sound good.
Yeah, it'll sound great. It'll probably sound great.
It's like what you do with those tools, you know what I mean, and also it has to speak to your peers, you know what I mean. So it's like as like I'm amazed and so grateful that like what I do still resonates with young people, and like young people makes them sound even younger than they are, but with like people growing up, you know what I mean? Like that's a miracle in a way, but like the way that just like when I was experiencing it when I was in my early 20s and stuff like that aesthetic of like what sounds cool to one of your peers at the time when you're young, and you really are the future of the world, as much as that is a cliche, it's real. You know what I mean? Whatever, you graduated high school or whatever, you're on your way out of high school or you're in college or something like that. And you kind of like, okay, you're not like a full adult or anything like that, but you, in a lot of ways, you're pretty smart, but you're still like, life hasn't kicked your ass yet. You know what I mean? So you have your idealism and you have your aesthetic that people just get when they hear from each other. So like, the fact that like, I think something like Gorilla Biscuits really nails that. And I think it has a certain, not to gas myself or something, but the only way that this is happening is that it has some sort of timeless quality that connects
absolutely
to people of that age and can still resonate with you, because I think it has some certain truths to it that I think are sort of just continue to make sense throughout your life. Like we were talking about lyrics before. It's like, wow, I really succinctly nailed that at this time in such a simple way. It's hard to say things that simple at my age. You know what I mean? It's like want to, you know what I mean? And but you see, as life goes by, you kind of like, there's so much more nuance to it than you could ever imagine at that age. And and that perspective can, it informs and it can enrich your life. Like nuance, of course, it's super great and it's cool to see it and I appreciate it. But also you can lose the plot, you know what I
Yes.
mean, through that.
Yes.
So I think, that's another aspect.
Yeah, authenticity and being yourself and being true to yourself. Again, I'm saying these cliches, but I can't remember where I read it, but it came from some kind of storytelling, and this applies to, I think, lyrics too. I think that sometimes people think when they're creating art or writing lyrics or writing a story that making something universal will make it more accessible. But what you learn as you get older is the more specific I go into my experience, the more deep. Instead of going wide, I go deep within myself. The more it resonates with people because you're being so specific to your experience that they're finding they're like, wow, I had such a similar experience. You weren't trying to write to reach them. You were just, talking about what you were going through, but it still resonated in such a profound way because it was so uniquely yours. And so I just feel like that is such an amazing thing about the creative process is the more you are 100% you, the more you reach those people, you know what I mean?
I think that's true. And I think, conversely, like where I just heard this the other night, the podcast I was listening to, but like where, it was like a Buddhist, how do you summarize Buddhism? And that there is no, I'm totally saying this wrong, but like I love it. The gist that I got from it was that there actually is no unique you. You know what I mean? Like your concept of like that I am this thing, and there's this little guy in my head that's pushing the buttons and steering stuff. That doesn't really. It isn't really a thing. Like it's just like a sort of illusion that your mind creates. So like when you delve into like the idea of that unique you are in fact delving into the more universal thing.
Yes.
The deeper you go into that, in fact, like you are connecting to feelings and thoughts that everyone has. And the more honest you are with that, even if it's under the illusion that it is like, oh, well, I have such a unique point of view and understanding of myself or this circumstance or whatever, it doesn't make you grandiose or pompous unless you just are that way. But you are in fact touching on something more universal. And I read that with people that are doing sort of, people will say like, oh, well, I don't know, dude, God just like gave it to me or what, you know what I mean? Like it just was inspired. It came together in 20 minutes. Like it just laid itself out. I would say that's one way to look at it, that you are actually just connecting with the universal things that we all feel, that we all experience, and that you use yourself as a means to get there. Like it's not like I'm saying I'm experiencing that kind of thing too often. Maybe when I look back at it and the way that you were describing it made me think of that. Like, I think you do write what you know.
Right.
But,
right. And I believe what you're, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say by writing what I know, I'm actually connecting to what everyone knows.
And I think that that's the nail on the head. And I probably wasn't saying it well before, but going deep within yourself, you find that it resonates with everybody else. We're all connected and we didn't realize it. And I had this, and I think you're right. I think exactly what you're talking about, not to philosophize too much, but of course, during the pandemic, I was taking a lot of downtime and reflective time. And, you get a little hyper in your mind and spiritualize and kind of think and philosophize. And I had this vision at one point in time, and this has probably been said a million times in other beliefs and whatnot, but I had this vision of like all of humanity and all of existence was like this nebulous ink, right? That it has existed since the beginning of time. It was like a flowing ink. And that when you're born, we're like a little beaker, and like an eyedropper takes from the ink and drops it into the vessel that is the human body, but it's all from the same source. Yeah. And then when you're done, the drop of you, when you've lived your whole life, it goes right back up into the ink, and then only to do this over and over and over and over again. And so I had this idea, this kind of philosophy that while we're in these unique containers, the ink is still the same. It's all from the same place. It's all from the same source. And so there really isn't an individual you. You get to carry that little drop, that because it goes back in and whatever, we're just sharing kind of existence. And it was just this wild, I sound like I'm so high right now, but
no, but I feel you, dude. I get it. Like,
yeah.
I think it's a very, I mean, there's a lot of religions that'll kind of like will go towards that idea, or philosophies that will go towards that idea. And I think it's interesting where if you have that understanding and you accept that premise, like, it's very much what Buddhism, I think, is about. So too. But we work so hard to be like, well, I'm this guy and I'm doing this thing, and like I'm a man, all this like rugged individuality.
I am this thing, right?
Yeah. And you know what I mean? I'm whatever it is, like I like metal. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm a metal guy, or I believe in this political candidate or whatever. You know what I mean? All these like identifiers, or like I'm really straight. You know what I mean? Or like I'm a musical genius, or I'm a CEO, or
totally.
Or I got fucked over. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
just
fucked
personal,
over.
right? Just like it's all about me. Yeah.
And it's like, meanwhile, like, I think what you're saying about this ink thing is something maybe more comforting to plug into, because I want to do the things that I want to do because I'm interested in them, because I'm driven to do them, and they give me joy, or they spread joy, or like I want to do those kind of things. I think most people are kind of like that. Yeah. And a lot of this other, like, kind of ego craziness, I think causes a lot you know
agreed.
You know what I mean? Or just creates more illusion about like what you end up treating people shitty. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think, and that's a really nice thing about like what I'm doing, or what you're doing as well, is that you're putting things out there, and you are working that that part of you that has like it's almost like a ripple in the water, if we're still using these kind of things, where like your interpretation of that, whatever that thing, that ripple, wherever that started, by the time it hits you, you have to push that forward and put that out and be a conduit to it. So I think, creativity is a way that I kind of, and my friendships, my relationships, and how I participate in those kind of things is part and parcel of that. I don't know. It helps me stay sane.
Yeah.
In a mad world gone mad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's somewhat of a, being somebody who needs to create, it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse. It's a burden in a way, because we seem like crazy people to people who don't have this urge to constantly like, I have to make something. I have to. And one of the last analogies of my ink thing, and then we can walk away from Jacob's ink philosophy. Right. But one of the things that made me really come to terms with is, my whole life I've been a very hypersensitive person, and I see life seems loud. I seem to feel very, very deeply, very emotionally. And so when I thought about that beaker, that container that the human body is, I was like, well, some of us, when they take the dropper from the ink, sometimes they drop a little bit too much into the beaker, and those people go through life kind of like everything's a little strong all the time. And that really helped me kind of come to grips with like, I'm not really different from people around me, but maybe there's just a little too much of the ink in me. You know what I mean? Just a little bit too much.
Inked up.
Yeah. I'm all inked up. A guy with 0 tats too. But anyway, so thanks for letting me go on that like philosophical tangent. But I thought it was really relevant to, what we were talking about being an artist and creative, and how we connect with people. And you have, many decades under your belt of these amazing bands that have influenced so many. And it seems like there's no sign of slowing you down, because you're still touring, you're still putting out, albums and solo stuff, Quicksand, Rival Schools. It's still going. So no sign of stopping for Walter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm full steam ahead. I mean, I definitely want to set up some time to do nothing,
Yeah.
which is not that, that's not now, but next year I'm going to set up some time to like
Take
do
it
nothing.
easy.
And this year in January, I started off the whole year. I started off for the year in India, just on a retreat, and the
Amazing.
whole month of January was just super chill and restorative and not involved with you know the kind of loop you can find yourself in. So
Yeah.
doing nothing is important, but I'm having so much fun. You know, playing Riot Fest was a blast. I played Furnace Fest last weekend. Next weekend I'm going to Mexico to play a festival, and it's just a lot of fun stuff. And I really love the people that I work with. So my
Amazing.
bandmates are awesome.
Awesome. So we can expect probably some new releases, new albums down the road from you still, of course.
For sure, in 2024, I've got a few things cooking. So
Exciting.
it's time to put out some new music. So yeah, I'll definitely be posting and stuff about that.
Well, you have so much music out there already. You probably could say to the world, I'm not going to release new music anymore because I've done so many, but I have a feeling that you just can't help yourself. You got to keep creating stuff all the time.
Yeah, what you were saying about having too much ink, I think of it as like a certain sort of mental illness where you just are constantly like thinking of some sort of thing that you want to make, or, you know, that's why my phone is full of voice memos. It's like, and I like seriously 98% of them never get listened to again.
Sure.
But I can't concentrate until it's somehow documented, and then I can function and listen and pay attention, because if I have something in my head, I need to get that idea out some way. And that's it. Whether people hear it someday or whatever, like, of course I want to do that, but it's like this sort of compulsion in a way. So but it's awesome. I'm not complaining about it. I feel grateful for it.
And we're grateful for it too. And I'm grateful that you came on the show today. I've held you for long enough, I think. I know you got things to do. But it's just been so great getting to know you, and you're such a great guy. And I'm so glad we got to shake hands and meet at Riot Fest. And I look forward to seeing you next time you're in LA or I'm anywhere near you're playing. It's just been fantastic.
Thank you so much, Jacob. A pleasure to meet you and great talking with you.
Yeah, man. Well, have a great rest of the weekend. Thanks for being on Waterproof Records. And everybody, make sure you check out the millions of tracks out there from Walter Schreifels and his mini bands and solo works. So thanks for joining me, Walter. We'll see you next time.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Jacob.
What a fantastic interview. It was so great to get that extended time to talk with Walter Schreifels and talk about hardcore and talk about how he came up into music, his inspiration, Rock and Roll High School, the soundtrack. You know, once he told me that that influence of the Ramones, I really saw how you could become such a prolific melody and chord songwriter if you're inspired by the Ramones, because they really did make it feel like what they were doing was something you're like, if you could feel that energy of writing songs, and it was definitely transferred to Walter. And it's just such a great guy, so charming. And I love that we got a little philosophical there at the end. I thought that was nice. And I've always kind of wanted to talk about that idea that I had in my head, and it just seemed like the right time. But anyway, if you guys are, if we should talk about that in a separate thing or something somewhere, let me know. I'd love to. Maybe we should get like a philosophy thing going. But also, I don't know if you are aware, but I do have a subscriber thing on Instagram. That's the only place I'm doing it right now. I haven't done Patreon or anything like that, but I have subscribers on Instagram, and I set that up. It's only $2.99. That's what I did. I only did that because I'm not greedy, I promise. I did it so that people who really wanted to participate in a subscriber channel, and that channel has a chat where I talk to them. I tell them about my ideas that are coming for my Sunday Buried Treasures series. I talk about things that I'm working on. They get to see videos of, you know, I've uploaded everything from a video that I'm working on, or this is an idea for a song. This is kind of an opening riff. So it's a fun community. If you want to come join it, it's very easy. We have got such a great crew. So shout out to my Waterproof crew. We've gotten to know each other so well. And just a fun, good time. So if you're interested in doing that on Instagram, you can hit subscribe, and it's $3. You know, it's $3 a month, but I promise I try to make it worth your while to be a subscriber, to get that conversation with me on a regular basis. You know, if you have questions for me or you want to talk to me, and I know a lot of you do, because I get a lot of messages telling me to listen to your band or check out this band or do something on this band. And I just cannot get to all of those. But if you are on the subscriber channel, it is a good way to get my attention and to also have build a relationship with me over time if you're interested. So anyway, that's really the only place that you pay for anything. Everything else I'm doing here is for free, and I hope that's great. I hope you enjoy that. But thank you again for joining me today for my guest with Walter Schreifels from Quicksand and Rival Schools and Gorilla Biscuits and, wrote Civ and, so, I mean, gosh, I could try to list them all, producer of Title Fight, so many bands, so much work out there. But such a great guest, and I hope to be friends with him for many years to come and see them perform a lot. So thank you for joining me. Make sure you check out distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Get that 30% off your first year of uploading music. And thank you for joining me again. This is always a pleasure. This is a treat for me. I love doing what I do, and I can't do it without you. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're telling people about Waterproof Records if this is your bag and you like it. So thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.